Game 1 of the playoffs for the Lakers versus the Suns did not go well for them. LeBron James was timid, Anthony Davis played terribly, Drummond was a disaster on defense, Devin Booker had an amazing performance, Ayton was free to do whatever he wanted at the basket, and all of this was despite Chris Paul playing bad because of a shoulder injury. You cannot, as a Lakers fan, walk away with anything more than concern after Game 1 unless you are just completely oblivious to how good this team is and how big of a threat they actually are to LA's championship hopes. The Lakers did not look good, and the Suns were not even playing at their best. And I very much got the impression in Game 1 that the Lakers were not taking this as seriously as they should. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why they should fear the Suns and act accordingly. Let's talk about it. Before I continue on with this video, about half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall in that 50%, then please subscribe for playoff coverage pretty much every day. Also drop a like on this video, only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Let's talk about the biggest problems for the Lakers in Game 1 and see how that affects them for the series as a whole, potentially. Drummond was killed on D. Ayton feasted as a result. Devin Booker got multiple clean looks as a result. LeBron was incredibly passive. AD settled for jumpers over and over and over again. Their rotations did not take advantage of the Suns' weaknesses. Not a soul could guard Devin Booker, and really just the whole team looked sloppy and out of sync. First, let's talk about the issues I expect to resolve themselves. LeBron being passive in a Game 1 is absolutely nothing new. We've seen this dozens of times. It seems that he just, at the start of a series, kind of feels out the team and gets an idea of what he can do, and then from there, he's pretty damn good. The thing about that, though, is I don't know that this team is the team to not just come firing out of the gates. He really should have done that, but at this point, the damage is done. You can't reverse time and make him do it a second time over. It's over. The Suns won Game 1 because he was too passive. So you deal with that result and just don't repeat it. And as for the defensive issues with Andre Drummond, I presume that those will not continue for long because I think Vogel is a good enough head coach to realize that Drummond is being killed and thus stop playing him. He did not play very much in Game 2 as a result of how poorly he defended the pick and roll and really just defended period in Game 1. I do want to elaborate on that Drummond thing a bit though, because I still think he's going to play some, and I think a lot of that is again a result of the Lakers not taking this team as seriously as they should. They're acting like this is a first round matchup and they can afford to make tiny mistakes, when really they should be treating this like they're in the conference finals and you need to get every little edge that you can. Drummond is probably going to play a little bit, and sorry, but even that's too much. Really, they need to go with Anthony Davis at center pretty much every minute that Anthony Davis is on the floor. Stop pairing him with another big man. And when you have to take AD off the floor because he can't play all 48 minutes for like the 8 or so minutes where AD is sitting, put in Marc Gasol. Now, Marc Gasol will have pretty much all of the exact same issues defensively as Drummond. However, at least offensively, Marc can space the floor and pass very well. Drummond is contributing nothing offensively except for offensive rebounds and fucking up the spacing. I would say give those minutes to Montrezl Harrell because he's more versatile on the perimeter and can step up and things like that. But while he has the speed and the versatility to do so, he doesn't. So that's not really the solution either. Really, there is just a hole that they are making bigger by giving Drummond these minutes when just AD at center and then just survive those 6 to 8 minutes that you have not AD at center on the floor, and you should be fine. As for Anthony Davis, he has got to stop settling for jumpers, especially when his jumper isn't going in. Most of this game, Jay Crowder was his primary defender. Though he saw some Ayton minutes, Jay was definitely the main guy. And credit to Jay Crowder, he is actually a very, very talented post defender for somebody his size. He has a little bit of PJ Tucker in him in that respect. He did the same stuff versus Giannis in the second round of the playoffs for the Heat last year. By the way, the Heat letting Jay Crowder go was the biggest mistake of their offseason by far, but that's a whole nother note. Well, actually, no, not trading for James Harden probably was, but you get my point. But while Crowder is a skilled post defender, he is also like 6'5", 6'6", and Anthony Davis is nearly 7 feet tall, and he keeps taking these mid-range jumpers. Now, speaking of that PJ Tucker comparison, we saw the same thing happen versus the Houston Rockets in round 2. Anthony Davis continually settled for fadeaway and mid-range jumpers over PJ Tucker in that series. Now, the difference there was Anthony Davis was making every fucking jumper that he took against the Rockets. So at that point, settle all you want, because what he's doing, what he is settling for, is working. But in game 1, what AD was settling for wasn't working. So until his jumper starts dropping, he needs to be more aggressive trying to just bully Jay Crowder in the post. He was absolutely not doing that in game 1. And it's not as though he attempted it and was met with resistance and then that resulted in the mid-range jumpers. You could tell he just had no interest in actually challenging Crowder, which is ridiculous. Booker was absolutely ridiculous in game 1. He had KCP as the primary defender for a majority of the game, and then at the end there was a lot of Caruso on him, and credit to both of those guys. They did a relatively good job. I'd say Caruso did a little bit better than KCP, which is no surprise because he's probably a better defensive player. The problem was when it came time for help defense, because Booker is too good for single coverage to really actually matter. In the pick and roll specifically, I mentioned Drummond getting killed by him. So many mid-range jumpers out of the pick and roll where Drummond was just getting a hand up way too late or not even a hand up at all. And that's something that could be mitigated once again by Anthony Davis at center. The thing is, though, the problem with a guy like Booker is, like I said, single coverage, you're really going to struggle to actually bother him. He gets in his rhythm with his mid-range pull-up and three-point pull-up and really everything he does, regardless of if you have a hand up or not. Really, the way that you interrupt Booker is by being physical with him and getting more size on him than what he is used to. And really, the only guy on this Lakers team that is capable of doing something like that would be LeBron James, because he has stepped up significantly defensively over the past 2 years to where he is once again a very positive defender. Thing about that is, though, I don't know that the Lakers are going to give LeBron that matchup, because that's a very challenging and energy consuming defensive matchup, and they're going to want energy from LeBron on the offensive end. So it's a difficult balance to strike. I would say at the very least, have LeBron guard him in the last 5 minutes of the game so that Booker is less effective when it matters the absolute most. As for the sloppiness of the Lakers, as I mentioned, game 1, the team just didn't have a flow to it that they've had in years previous. Now, it does not help that the Lakers have not had great shooting throughout their tenure, and a lot of their offense was just not working because the shots were not dropping in many instances. But regardless, really the biggest reason why this team felt sloppy is that, as I have harped on multiple times already, this team's chemistry is just not together because the roster made significant changes over the offseason, but this team has barely played together since their championship run. LeBron and AD being out all year has resulted in players playing in different ways to adjust to the fact that the two best players on the team are not playing, or it's just one of them, or whatever. This is why I was confused as to why the Clippers tried to avoid the Lakers in round 1, because that was probably the best time to face the Lakers, and I think they're showing that versus the Suns, at least in game 1 they did. They're at their worst right now. By the time a conference finals happens, the Lakers are going to be fully in the swing of things, and if they survive to that point, the Clippers are probably fucked. So don't know about that decision. But regardless, the Lakers are not in a good position right now chemistry-wise, and they are really also not in the position to struggle with something like that, because the Suns are too good of a team for you to work out these kinks while there's just an okay first-round matchup versus a team that'll take a game or two off of you. No, the Suns can absolutely defeat you if you are trying to work these things out right now. So they have to figure out that really, really fast, and that is not an easy task to say the least. I also got the impression, as I mentioned earlier, that the Lakers were not taking this series as seriously as they should. AD playing as passively as he was, LeBron not really shooting the ball much at all. He had 18 points. He shot like 7 threes out of his like 14, 13 field goal attempts, and that's just not going to cut it. One thing I mentioned in my Lakers versus Suns series preview was that their minutes when they have Dario Saric at center, the Lakers should take advantage of that with AD at center, but they did not do that. They've played very few. They didn't play any minutes overlapping, actually. As soon as Saric was on the floor, AD was subbed out. So take advantage of that next time. Try to adjust to the Suns' rotations to punish them for having Saric as their backup 5. Not that Saric is a terrible defender, but he's not the best and certainly can be out-physicaled by Anthony Davis. However, based on the way Anthony Davis played in Game 1, he'll probably just shoot more fadeaways over him. But back on how the Lakers are not taking the Suns seriously, it very much seems like the Lakers are playing with their food. However, the Suns are not food. The Suns are fire, and they are playing with fire. And no, that's not a pun intended because it's the Suns, but you get my point. The Lakers are playing with fire, thinking they're playing with their food, and they're going to get burnt if they keep doing that. And the reason why really the Lakers should genuinely fear this Suns team is that the Suns won Game 1 rather convincingly, and that was in spite of the fact that they did not play to nearly their best capacity. Chris Paul's shoulder injury had him off the whole game. His pull-up jumper that is so smooth just felt completely unnatural and forced, and his passes were not on the money at all. And their role players and spot shooters, Bridges and Jay Crowder, went a combined 2 for 12 from 3. Scoring just 99 points with the defensive issues that the Lakers had in that Game 1 is actually pretty poor for this Suns team, because they're also a great offense, and 99 versus a not great defense is on the low end of things. Really, they relied entirely upon Booker carrying them, as well as Ayton getting the easy opportunities from the Lakers' poor defense. Other than that, they weren't getting offense for shit. So the Suns were not at their best, not even really close, and yet they still convincingly beat you in Game 1. So that is why you need to take this team seriously, because you didn't get them at their best and they took care of you like it wasn't much effort. So start taking this team seriously, stop playing with fire, make the adjustments I mentioned in this video, and the Lakers should be fine. At the end of the day, I'm still picking the Lakers to win this series, but this Game 1 showed me very clearly that the Lakers are not quite ready for it right now, and they need to get ready for it immediately. Game 2 is happening today in a few hours of when this video goes up. We will see how they adjust. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, but that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more anime content like this, and cue the outro music.